Asha, welcome back to my channel and welcome to an unhaul. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my reading and my library and my channel in general, and I figured it was time to get rid of some books so that my library can really reflect where I want my reading to go, what my reading looks like now. Time to get rid of things that are not serving me, that are just causing me a little bit of stress because I haven't read them, or just things that haven't brought me as much joy that I just don't want on my shelves. And I think now is a perfect time. We've got over 30 books here, so let's just get right into it. Because there are so many books, I'm gonna break it into two sections, so we're gonna go ahead and start off with books I have not read yet. Starting off with one that I hauled somewhat recently, this is Les Fiancées de l'Hiver by Christelle Dabo. You guys might know this as The Winter's Promise. I decided to buy it in French because for some reason I thought I was gonna get back into reading in French and that YA fantasy would be a good place to start. All I know about this is that it is about a girl who lives in these like spires that float in the sky, and she's supposed to be married off to someone who lives in a different spire. So this is her traveling there and I guess like politics and stuff. Like I said, I thought that getting back into French would be easier if I read a YA fantasy because I thought maybe the language would be simpler. I thought the story might be more engaging, but realistically, no, it's not a good way to get back into French. For one, fantasy usually comes with its own language, and I'm not sure I want to relearn it entirely in French and just be lost. But for two, I'm just not reading that much YA fantasy anymore in general. It's not really where I want my reading to go. I end up being mostly underwhelmed by them, and it's just not the experiences I'm looking to get out of books anymore, so this one has to go. And in that spirit, I have There Will Come a Darkness by Katie Rose Poole. Now, I have heard great things about this. I don't know really what the plot synopsis is. I think there's something about like prophet and the coming end of the world, maybe some gods, and like in theory those things work really well for me. However, I did give this one a bit of a try at some point before moving into this place, and I just remember it being kind of generic, which is why I didn't keep reading it. I wasn't particularly motivated to continue on with it, and I think that's kind of a sign that this might just end up being a 3-star read for me, and I don't want to waste my energy with 3-star reads, unfortunately. I don't have enough time or energy to waste on books that are not going to absolutely blow me away and remain with me. Again, same vein, we have Strange the Dreamer. Now, I thought I got rid of this last time I did an unhaul, so if that's any indication about how I feel about this, I know this book is beautifully written, I know it's won awards, but if I haven't picked it up by now, I probably will not anytime soon. I am still somewhat interested in this because I heard there's a lot to it in terms of the writing and the themes, but realistically, A, this is an eyesore. B, if I'm ever dying to read it, I can very easily find it at the library. So I'm not gonna waste space on my shelves with this. It's just not worth it. Next we have 11/22/63 by Stephen King. So I picked this up at the thrift store because it was in great condition. I know this is an alternate history about the killing of John F. Kennedy, and while I think that is a cool premise, this like alternate history, someone being sent back in time to stop the assassination, I don't think I'm gonna get to it. I really don't think I care that much. I like Stephen King well enough. I still plan to read a couple more books by him that I haven't gotten around to yet, but I think this is one of those that's just not for me. I don't think I'm gonna get what I want out of it from it, and it's also just massive. This is a door stopper, and for a historic, like an alternate history, I don't think this needs to be 850 pages. I don't think I'm gonna get around to it soon. I only really picked it up because it was in great condition at the thrift store, and like I like King. But at this point, if I haven't picked it up, I've had no interest picking it up. I don't think I will ever read this book, so it's gotta go. There's actually a bit of a trend in the unread books that they are mostly thrifted, and I think that is a sign in general that the old adage is true, that if you wouldn't buy it full price, don't go buying it on sale. I think I need to stop with mentality that like, it's on sale and I might read it at some point, so I'll pick it up, because now they've just been languishing on my shelves and I haven't read them, and I just need to get it together next time I go to a thrift store and not pick up these books. On the other hand though, it's kind of nice because brand new Canadian hardbacks are anywhere from $35 to $50 depending on the genre. Nonfiction can go up to 50 bucks. Even paperbacks can go up to like $40, $45 for nonfiction. Hardcover new fantasies are always about $35 to $40, and it's getting kind of obscene. So like the thrift store is still great for that, but realistically I need to think about what I actually want to read versus what's like kind of on my list for at some point, because I don't want them sitting on my shelves for years. In that spirit of thrifting things, because it was a great deal, I'd picked up The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna at some point. This was everywhere on BookTube when I started BookTube, which is another point I think I might talk about. I think at the end I want to sit down and just do a little discussion, a little reflection on all this. But when I started on BookTube, this book was everywhere. It was really well loved. I found this good condition hardcover of it, and I thought, I'll pick it up. I'd like to read it. I don't read historical fiction. I know this is about two sisters that are living in Nazi-occupied France, and I've heard that it is beautiful and touching and all this and that, but like, I don't care that much. If I ever run out of things to read, I might read it, but I feel like there's so many other things I would rather read than this, and I kept it around because it's in great condition and I might like it, and what if I absolutely fall in love with it? But if I don't even want to pick it up, I've had it for 3 years now, 4 years, I'm just not gonna get to it, so this is gonna go. Again, a thrift find, but this one has a bit of a story. I have Fatherland by Robert Harris. I've been trying to read this for a while. I've wanted to. This is also my mom's husband's favorite author. He's written a lot of these like alternate history and historical fiction novels, and I want to see what the fuss is about. But for one, I've had this and I still haven't picked it up, and it's not a priority. For two, his books are always at the thrift store, so I can always go pick it up if I have a burning desire to read it. But like, honestly, if I haven't read it yet, it hasn't called to me, it has not intrigued me. I think the premise is cool. It is this alternate history if the Axis had won, which I'm always down for. I love a good alternate history, especially when it comes to World War II, because it's a lot more recent. It can really impact our current world, but I just don't care that much. I've had it for so long and I still haven't touched it, so I think that's a sign that this just might not be for me, at least not in this current moment. I'm still interested in reading Robert Harris, but I don't need it at this moment on my shelves, staring at me, getting upset that I haven't picked it up yet. Again, same trend, Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So I've read The Night Circus and I liked it well enough, and I thought that this would be great. I've heard great things. This is about a man who walks into a library and finds a book about his own life, except he hasn't lived any of those experiences yet, and apparently it's very whimsical and a lot of vibes and very good writing. But I have this weird feeling that this is just gonna be a 3-star for me again. I picked it up because when I bought it, it was a recent release and it's in hardcover, it's in great condition, but that's not a reason to buy a book, okay? I still spent money on it and it's enough. Enough is enough. I don't think I'm gonna get to it. I'm not dying to read it. I want to read things that I'm excited for, and this is not one of them, so this is going to go. This one is an exception in that I'm still actually quite interested in reading it. It's part of a duology and it'll be over really quickly, but I don't really want it on my shelves. I don't know if I'm gonna love it, but that's not good enough reason to keep it around anyways, even if I think I might. That's An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This is kind of a first contact with aliens, but it's very much a social commentary, which I think I would quite enjoy, but I just don't know that I need a physical copy that's staring at me. When I'm ready to read it, which will be soon, I will read it, but I'm probably not going to pick up the sequel physically anyways. I think this would be a great book to pick up, maybe listen to on audio, because it's probably not going to be like earth-shattering, but I think I'm going to quite enjoy it still, so I would still like to read this very much. I just don't need it. I have here one that I wanted to read. My boyfriend ended up reading it. He bought it for himself and he said it was just not very good. I probably would not like it from the sounds of it. That's Haunted by Chuck Palahniuk. I read Fight Club. His writing style is something, but I thought I would still give this a try because I've heard it's genuinely quite scary. It's a collection of short horror novellas. No, it's not short stories, but it is. It's about a writer's retreat for horror writers, and they all write these short stories and they're kind of interwoven through the greater narrative of this writer's retreat. My boyfriend said it wasn't very good. There's a couple of stories in here that just don't interest me, that sound absolutely vile, so I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna get to it. He's cool if we get rid of it. He didn't like it that much either, not enough to keep it. He wants to keep all of Palahniuk's books because he's got a little collection going. But realistically, like, if he didn't like it, I'm not gonna read it. What's the point of keeping it on our shelves? I found this one while going through my shelves. I bought it for school because it was assigned reading, and then I never touched it. And that was Dunkirk, the history behind the motion picture. I don't care. I truly do not. And then I kept finding it at thrift stores. I was like, why did I pay money, like reasonable money for this? So that's gonna go. I don't have that much to say about it. Okay, these two are in a similar vein. I'll do them together. The first one hurts because it was a gift from my mom, but it is not a good translation. That's Bratya Karamazovы, Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is not only a horrific edition, there's like no space to take notes or anything, it's tiny, but the translation, that's what I'm looking for first and foremost. And then if you've been on my channel at all, this is my white whale. This is my cross to bear, my burden to carry. This book has been on my currently reading for like 3 years now, and I got like halfway through it. But I've decided that enough is enough. I picked up a better translation of this. This is The Count of Monte Cristo, in case you can't tell. I have not had luck with this translation. I think that might be part of my reading experience. So I am getting rid of this one. I picked up a better translation. I will be attempting to read it again. I'm hoping to maybe get around to it this summer. Have like a little novel I can pick up as like a serialized novel, so read little sections of this and hopefully get through it, because I did really enjoy what I did read of it, but I never finished it. And it's getting embarrassing. And so I will be eventually picking up a better translation of this. They've just gotta go. I've been a bit more interested in really making sure I pick up good translations of books. The funny thing is, I speak both of the original languages that these books are written in. However, I do not hate myself enough to read them in the original language. I don't think I am good enough to read these in the original language, or at the very least, I would rather enjoy them in my most like comfortable language, so I get the story and the themes, and then maybe eventually try to pick them up in French and Russian, but I'm not there yet. And if I do ever try that, I fear I will never pick up another book again, so we're not gonna go there. We're just gonna read them in English. I'll try to find a good translation for both of them, and hopefully that makes me actually want to pick them up and actually read them. And then we have a few nonfiction that I haven't read. I still love nonfiction, but there's a couple that have been sitting on my shelves, again, either thrifted or things that I wanted to read before I got really into nonfiction. So the first of these is Max Hastings' All Hell Let Loose. I'm just not that interested in these like sweeping overviews of historical events. I really like microhistory, niche history, and I'm tired of seeing this. I'm probably not gonna pick it up. When it comes to World War II, I'm a lot more interested in the history that we hear a lot less about, so the Russian front and the Asian front for sure. I'm just not as interested in this grand historical overview. I've heard the writing in this is fantastic, but I'm just not interested anymore. And along the exact same lines, Berlin by Anthony Beevor. Again, I heard this guy is a fantastic historian. I don't care. They've been sitting on my shelves. It's time to let them go. It's been long enough. Actually, quite similarly, we have Bill Bryson's A Short History of Nearly Everything. I don't know if it actually is a short history of nearly everything. I just heard that this was a great nonfiction book. It was popular. I wanted to pick it up because I found it at the thrift store, and I was like, well, this is one of those it seems like everyone's read, and like I might as well try. But respectfully, I do not care. I do not care. I want to read nonfiction books that are interesting and about smaller history, lesser known history, social history, micro history. Like, I don't want to read these huge overviews of a bunch of stuff. It doesn't interest me. And finally, for the books I haven't read for nonfiction, I have Yuval Noah Harari's Homo Deus. So I have read Sapiens. My mom gave it to me as a gift because the president of her company like recommended it to her, and she was like, I've heard it's great, you might like it. And it was fine. I liked it enough, but I hadn't read a lot of nonfiction at that point. But I did see this again at the thrift store, and I picked it up because it's hardcover in great condition, and I thought maybe I'd like to read it. But I just don't really care. In the same vein, just because it's popular doesn't mean I'm gonna like it. I know what I like in terms of nonfiction a lot more now, so this is gonna go. I'm sure someone else will be very glad to get their hands on it. Let's move on to some books I actually have read. Look at me, deciding to get rid of things. Let's start with this one, Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is just a shit edition. I don't particularly love Dracula, but when I read it, I was quite young. So I would maybe go back and read an annotated copy, or just not this. It doesn't inspire me to pick it up, and there's a bunch of other classics I would rather read first, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of this. Area X by Jeff Vandermeer. So this is a bind-up of his Southern Reach trilogy, which is this like cosmic horror trilogy about this weird area that exists on Earth that's very mysterious. There's really weird fauna and flora, and every time an expedition goes there, there's varying results of success. So I have not read the whole thing. I've only read the first book, and it was, don't get me wrong, perfect. Some of the best horror I've ever read. It was definitely cosmic horror, this weird unknown force. It was excellent. It was immaculate. I will still recommend it. It was 5 stars. I don't think I want to continue with the series. My bookmark's still in here. I don't think I want to continue with the series. I'm happy to leave Annihilation as a standalone, so I don't need to keep the whole bind up. If I ever want to reread Annihilation, I could just pick it up as like the novella that it is. I don't think I need the whole bind up. It takes up a lot of space, and it's just a reminder of like the series, and I don't really care to read the rest of it, so I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this. Series. We have the first volume of Berserk. I don't know if you can see it, I have the big deluxe edition bind up of the first 3 volumes. I'm not sure if I'm continuing the series. I have read the whole bind up of the first 3 volumes, so this one and the next 2, and I have feelings. I'm still gonna be making a recent reads and I will touch on it, so I'll talk more about it there, but I just don't need this specific edition if I'm collecting the deluxe volumes, which I probably will because they will probably take up less space than like 46 or whatever of these. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of this one. I have a little bit of YA that I've just been kind of hanging on to. So I had a deep obsession with these in high school. Mainly Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, but I also still have Dash and Lily's Book of Dares. It's time to let these go. Nostalgia is not good enough reason to hang on to these. I used to love this. I used to romanticize New York City and this idea of this relationship built around music and this adventure. And if I ever feel the need to revisit it, there's always the movie, but I don't need to keep these. I think it's good to close that chapter in my life and let these go. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I can keep them in a good place in my heart when I did read them, but I don't think I want to reread them and ruin that magic. So these are gonna go. Similarly, we have The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I will be keeping Looking for Alaska. I have an unhealthy attachment to that book, and I will not be answering any questions. Thank you very much. This one I didn't like nearly as much. Again, if I'm ever feeling super nostalgic, there's always the movie, but I just don't really need to keep this around. And then while we're on John Green, I hadn't read it, but Turtles All the Way Down. It was a gift from my boyfriend when we started dating because he didn't know that like I hadn't really read him a lot at that point and that I wasn't really interested. He just knew that I liked John Green, so he picked it up for me, which was really sweet. But I'm not the target audience for this. From what I heard, it reads a lot younger than some of his other ones, and it's just not interesting to me. The synopsis, which is about some girl who gets like an offer, or like some mysterious man makes her an offer to find his treasure. I don't fucking know. There's some kind of mystery element to it, but like I don't care to read it. I'm not going to, so I'm gonna go and get rid of it. But I still have a very fond place in my heart for John Green. I didn't like Paper Towns. Do I? Because I didn't like Paper Towns and Abundance of Catherines either. I really just like Looking for Alaska and like Fault in Our Stars, sort of. And that's why I will be keeping Looking for Alaska, because I liked it, and we keep things we like, and we get rid of things that no longer serve us. In that same vein, I have Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. I am keeping Scythe for now. I will probably eventually get rid of it. I don't know. That one's really good. That one has a lot of good stuff, but the sequel, Thunderhead, I didn't like. The Toll, I didn't love. It's this dystopian world where people can't die. We've conquered death and disease and poverty, but there are still people who have to kill people in order to keep the population to a reasonable amount. And while I, like I said, love the first book, I don't really need to keep the second, I think, if I didn't like it. I don't know if that's reasonable to only keep like the first book in a trilogy, but I think, like, I don't need it. I'm not gonna reread the whole series. I would probably only reread the first book if I ever did. So I can get rid of this. Similarly, Why We Broke Up. So I read this in high school, and when I rediscovered BookTube and reading in general, I thought I would give this a go again to see if I still liked it. I'd wanted to reread a lot of my old favorites just to kind of, I don't know, figure out which ones were worth keeping, especially before I moved, but I kind of ran out of time. But I remembered really loving this one, but now that I kind of think on it again, I think this is better left in my memory as a good thing, because probably upon reread it won't hit the same. I'm thinking I probably related to it a lot more as a young adult, but I think this is just not gonna hit the same, and it's not really worth my time, I'm thinking, or keeping on my shelves. It's just the story of a girl who gives her ex a box with a letter and like trinkets, basically explaining why they broke up. And I just like, again, like I don't think I'll be able to relate to it. I'm not the target audience, and that's okay. So I'm not gonna reread it. It's better to keep it as a good memory rather than perhaps potentially ruining it, so I'm gonna pass it along. We have a couple of like fantasy sci-fi that I've actually read that I enjoyed, but I don't need to keep on my shelf. So first, Found Your Side and Shorefall. I have actually finished the trilogy now. I'm crossing series off my list. I read this all in the month of February to March, I think, mostly February. I never ended up getting to purchase the third book because it's still only available in hardcover, but that's okay because I don't think I'm ever gonna reread it. It's a great series. It's about a thief living in this like Medici era Florence inspired city, and she's hired to steal a very powerful object, and she does, and then she realizes that it has like bigger consequences than she initially thought. And while it was a ton of fun, the characters didn't stick with me. Again, I'll be talking about it in my recent reads, but it just like the characters didn't stand out to me, and it's not something I feel like I would come back to over and over. It didn't have like a massive emotional impact. So I think it's good to just go ahead and let someone else enjoy this series because it is a good series. I would recommend it. I don't want to keep things that I'm not unhealthily obsessed with and attached to and that I can come back to and pour over and over again. Again, in the same vein, Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. I binged this entire series end of December. Like I read this one in one sitting, and then the rest of the series I finished off in January, February, and it was good. It's first contact with aliens. This woman finds this giant metal hand when she's a child, and down the line as an adult she becomes one of the researchers on the project of like figuring out what the hell this hand is. It's good. Again, we'll be talking about it in my recent reads. It's not a series that will stick with me. It's not a series that I loved wholeheartedly, so I might as well just go ahead and get it off my shelves. Again, 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. This is a fantasy about a woman who has to travel to the capital city to participate in this almost competition to become the next leader. There's gods involved, which I really liked. This is not my favorite Jemisin though. I've already gotten rid of the, what's it called? The Broken Earth trilogy. I had thrifted that one in its entirety and then realized that like I just wasn't really a fan. It wasn't really for me. I am still a diehard fan of the Dreamblood duology, at least the first book that I had read. This one was good. I just, like, I'm not in love with it, so I'm gonna pass it along, but it was good. Next we have My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I really love The Only Good Indians, and I thought I'd pick up some of his other work. This one was a more recent release when I picked it up, and I just didn't love it. It's kind of a subversion of a slasher. The girl who's our main character is obsessed with slashers. She thinks there's one starting in her town, and she's kind of trying to put all the pieces together and figure out who's playing which role and where the story's gonna go, but it's real life, so it's not just a story. I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't like love it, so no reason to keep it. We also have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This was a thrifted copy, so I'm not like upset. It's not like I spent the 32 Canadian dollars on it. I read this. It's about the magical circus that shows up at some point and then disappears at some point. And while the vibes were great, I didn't think this was a bad book. I don't think I'm gonna reread it. It's just not my style of book. It's not the thing I'm gonna be reaching for, so I'm gonna pass it along. We also have Red Rising by Pierce Brown, so I hung on to this thinking I might potentially continue the series. It's about this, it's like a sci-fi fantasy about some guy whose wife dies, and he kind of becomes the leader of the resistance because they were told that they're preparing Mars for human life, and they were basically slaves, but they thought they were doing it for altruistic reasons, and then it turns out people have been living on Mars, they've been lied to, and now it's time to rebel. Nothing wrong with that. I hated the writing. There's a lot of things I hated about this, and I thought maybe I would continue it because everyone seems to love this series, but I think it's okay to not continue. I've come to terms with the fact that I don't think this is going to be a series for me. I don't understand why people like it even, because I thought it was entirely derivative, poorly written and executed. And while there were good ideas in it, I just don't think it was good. So it's okay. I don't have to like everything popular, so I'm gonna go ahead and finally pass this along. I also have My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This was good. This was fun. It's about a girl whose friend gets possessed, and they have to try to figure out what the hell's happening, how to get rid of it. Is she even really possessed? I thought this was really campy, really fun, a great look at female friendships, very like 80s aesthetic, which is kind of cool that it like read through the book, and it was fun. I'm just not gonna reread it. My boyfriend's read it too, he enjoyed it enough, but it's not like earth-shattering, amazing, so we're gonna get rid of this. And finally, last book, Smarter Than You Think by Clive Thompson. This is a nonfiction. It's about how technology is changing our minds for the better. So to all the people who say that we're getting dumber because of technology, we're getting lazier, shorter attention span, this is an interesting look at how technology and humans can interact to create something better, bigger, smarter. And while I enjoyed this, and would actually really recommend it because it's written in almost like articles, so it's really digestible and easy to read. I don't see myself even coming back to it to refer to it, so I really just don't need this on my shelves, but it was decent. That's it. There's a massive pile. Yeah, this felt really cathartic, I'm not gonna lie. When I started BookTube, I felt like I needed to catch up on everything. I hadn't been reading in a while at that point anyways. BookTube got me back into reading, for which I'm eternally grateful, but I had this compulsion to buy things that were popular, to read things that were popular. When I started watching BookTube, it was a lot of YA fantasy creators that were popular and that were big and that were talking about the books, and the premises always sounded so great, and I was just picking up all these things that were talked about, that were popular, because I didn't know it was popular. I didn't even really know my taste fully. I feel like when I hit the slump and I really got to sit down and look at what my taste was, it became clear that so many things that were on my shelves, on my TBR, were just not serving me, were not part of what I wanted my reading to look like, not the things that I wanted to enjoy. And I also feel like BookTube has kind of shifted the way I think about reading, in that it is really like monthly in terms of the wrap-ups, and I have to talk about books a certain way, and obviously you don't, but it's hard to break out of that mentality at first. So I'm gonna be experimenting a bit more on my channel. I'm definitely not gonna be doing like monthly wrap-ups because it's obviously reading cannot fit neatly into that. I'm not gonna be prioritizing numerical goals, simply because I don't think that's a good way to it's not a good way to think about my reading. I don't want to focus on that. I want to make sure I'm really enjoying what I read and taking time with it and sitting with it. So again, all of this was kind of to serve those new goals. I realized the other day that my kind of word for the year, you know how sometimes you pick a word to kind of strive towards for the year. Mine is intentions. I want to do everything intentionally. I want to read intentionally. I want to buy things intentionally, and really just curate my library, my space, my reading to better reflect who I am and who I want to become. So that's part of this. I'm getting rid of things that do not serve a purpose in my life. BookTube has really helped me in getting back into reading and rediscovering the joy of it. And now it's time to really figure out, okay, I've read some of the popular things, I have done some of the things that everyone does, but now what is my reading? What do I like? What do I want to talk about? I don't want to keep things on my shelves that I kind of liked. I want to really keep things on my shelf that I love, talk about things that I love on my channel. And I'm just really glad I finally got around to this, honestly. It was way overdue. Way overdue for some of these titles. And the others, it's just more like making space for things that I will be bringing in that I will love more. So if you stuck around till here, thank you very much. Let me know if there's some of the ones that I haven't read that I should probably save, that you think are really worth it, because most of them will be coming off my TBR entirely. There's some that I do still possibly plan on reading, just not prioritizing, but most of them are entirely like, I'm never going to read them and it's time to stop lying to myself. But let me know if there's any I should save. Other than that, my social media is linked down below. You guys can come talk to me there. I know I've been MIA, but I'm happy to talk always. And yeah, other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!